Hello, I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions. And in this video we're going to talk about charging. We're going to talk about the components used in charging your electric conversion. So let's get started. The charging system consists of these four main components. The EVSE, sometimes called the charge station. That's your electric vehicle supply equipment. The charge port, where you plug into on your car. The charger itself. And then there's a couple other items that will be used. We're going to talk about the AVC2. And this just makes your vehicle compatible with public charging. So let's take a look at what these individual components look like and what they do. Here's an example of a wall-mounted EVSE. And so all of your level 2 charge stations are going to have this J1772 charge configuration. Okay? Like I said, this is what people call the charge station, whatever. And so this is where the supply is coming from. This is where we're getting the power from the EVSE. And it's going to go through this level 2 J1772 charger. Now you got to remember, we're a California company, so when I talk about some of these standards, I'm talking about US standards. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment. So this is one style, wall mounted in your garage or wherever. And of course, there's the public charging station that we're probably all familiar with. You see them in different locations, and there are more of them popping up all the time. And so you typically will have the level 2, the J1772, or you'll have a DC fast charge. And again, in the US, they're either the CCS or the CHAdeMO. Now, another one that you would probably want to have is a portable one. And so this type of thing. And it can be 110 or 220. Most of your new EVs come with, unless of course it's a Tesla, I don't know if they come with this or not, but I'm sure they come with some kind of accommodation for 110. And that's what this is. This is a standard 110 15 amp plug, and your J1772 allows you to charge off any 110 volt outlet. So those are a couple examples of your EVSE. Now let's take a look at the other end here, and that is the charge port itself that would be mounted on your vehicle. And so this is just compatible with that plug that we just looked at. And we'll talk more about these in a moment. So this is an example. This would be mounted somewhere on your vehicle. Common place to put it is where the original fuel port was. Let's take a look at another example. So here's an example of one on our demonstration board here. And we're going to use this in a moment. We'll actually plug in the EVSE into the charge port, and we'll take a look at, watch the charger come on and that kind of thing. So we'll do that in a moment. But let me show you a couple of other components. Okay, another component would be the charger. And here's just an example of a charger. This just happens to be an Elcon 2.5 kilowatt charger. You have your AC in, and you have your DC out. And then there's an enable port here. And we're not going to touch on that too much in this video, but I will refer to it later. And so here's another example. And this is an Elcon also. This is a 3.3 kilowatt Again, we've got our DC out and our AC in with some control wiring. So both of these are air cooled, as you could probably tell from the fans on top. So let's look at the big picture. So we have our source, the utility grid, solar on your house, whatever. That provides power for your EVSE. And that then supplies power to your charger through the charge port, through that J1772 connector. The charger then takes that AC input and converts it to DC to charge your traction pack. That's your charging system. Okay? Nothing too complicated about it. So now let's talk about it in a little different aspect, and that is, let's look at some of the components. Now, the EVSE, the level 2, that's 220 volts, 30 amps. That's the level 2 standard in the US. And so it's going to go through that J1772 connector. So here's what that connector looks like. So this is the view looking at the connector as the plug, as the EVSE would see it, okay? And what we have are 3 larger pins, and I'll come in a little bit closer there so you can see. So we've got 3 larger pins and then 2 smaller ones. So the larger pins are L1 and L2, line 1 and line 2, and then our ground. Now when you connect that to your charger, you're going to be connecting, depending on the charger, a lot of them, the smaller ones will actually come with a 110 plug on the end sometimes. So L1 goes to hot, L2 goes to the neutral, ground goes to ground. Now these other 2 pins are your communications link. That's what allows the vehicle to communicate to the EVSE. Because when you grab the EVSE off the wall or whatever, there's no power there. Okay? That power doesn't turn on until after you plug it into the charge port and they communicate with one another. Then the communications would be, start or not to start on your conversion. It's a little more complicated with, factory produced cars, but on yours it's just going to tell it to turn on or turn off. And that's done through this pilot and proximity. And so we're going to need to connect the pilot proximity to something to allow for that communications, to allow for that ability to turn on the EVSE or turn off the EVSE. So what I was just saying is when you first grab that, there's no power there. You plug it in, there's no power. You let your thumb off that little button right here, which does 2 things. It locks this into that charge port, and there's also a little micro switch in here. I don't know if you can hear that, but that switch allows this to, when you go to unplug, before you break the connection, you've got to press on that latch, and that switch is activated, and then you can pull it out. What that does is that shuts off the power, so there's no arcing, whether you're plugging in or unplugging, because the power is shut off first. And so those are the 2 pins that accommodate that. And so we use what's called an AVC2. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as usual. This is a way that we do it, and it's fairly common. And so let me show you what it looks like. So here's the AVC2. And they come in two models, and I'm not going to go into that in this video. But this is the AVC2R, as you can see. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 connections on that little device. And those 8 connections are pilot. So your pilot line from the J1772 would go here in proximity. Okay. And then there's a ground and a chassis. You just connect those two together, chassis ground, on your vehicle. Then you have 12 volts. And depending on how you do yours, again, there's more than one way. You can have that unswitched 12 volts or switched 12 volts. We use an unswitched 12 volt source, so it's coming directly from the battery. This thing is always on. And you want to use a 1 amp or smaller fuse. And so fused 12 volt source there, and then there's a built-in single pole double throw relay inside of here. And so it's a small relay, and so we use it to control another relay that we use for our safety interlock. Again, that's a topic for another video, and we've talked about them in other videos. But so you've got, you know, the single pole double throw, so you've got a normally closed and normally open contacts. And so because it's a small, it's rated at an amp or less, we use it to control another relay that handles a little more current. So that AVC2 then allows your vehicle to communicate through the J1772 charge port with the EVSE, and it will turn on or off. Now, let's take one more look at things here where we're going to look at it actually working, and we're going to use our demonstration board for that part of the video. So here we have our demonstration board. This is a complete conversion on the board here. And right here we have our J1772 charge port. We have our charger. We have a little green light. There's a fan on the top. And these will both come on once the charger comes on. And the charger then comes out of the charger and would go to your traction pack. And you can see here the traction pack. And so the positive comes out here and goes up to our main disconnect, through the disconnect to the most positive point of our traction pack. And the negative side comes down here, goes to the shunt, through the shunt to the most negative point in our traction pack. So that's the charger on the traction pack side. On this side, it connects to the J1772, just like I showed you on the whiteboard a moment ago. And so we have the AVC2 here wired in as discussed. And so we're going to take our EVSE input here, or output I should say, and we're going to plug it into our charge port. And when I do, you can see the little green light come on, and I don't know if you can hear over the ambient noises of a warehouse, but the fan comes on also. Now, that happens fairly quickly. Now, once I press this button to unplug it, you'll see this shut off. So I'm not going to unplug it, I'm just going to press the button. So as soon as I push this button right here to unlatch this, unlock this so I can unplug it, immediately the charger shuts off. And if I latch it again here, it takes off again, just as I explained to you a while ago. You can also see that when it's plugged in, a little green light comes on our AVC2 here. Again, when I press this lever, charger goes off, the light on the AVC2 goes off. Well, we're using that AVC2. We're using the relay on it to control what we call safety interlock relay. This safety interlock relay is going to interrupt power going to the controller. So let me unplug this for a moment. I'm going to turn on the ignition. You can hear the main contactor come on. I can hear the cooling system come on. And I can hear my phone. So our little light's on here showing that the ignition's on. There's a light on here just as a reminder to show you that the controller is on. Okay? So what we're going to do, turn the ignition back off, we're going to plug in charger came on. Now we're going to show you what happens when I turn on the ignition. I turn on the ignition light comes on, but the controller does not. That's because this interrupts the power going from our ignition to the controller, disabling it. So while we're plugged in, doesn't matter if you're charging or not, if you're plugged in, the vehicle's disabled and you're not going to go anywhere. And we've talked about wiring all that up in other videos, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again, just not in this one. So that's our charging setup. The EVSE is connected to the grid or solar or whatever, and it's being powered. And then transfers that power through a cable, through the J1772 connector, through your charge port, to your charger. The charger then converts that to DC and charges your battery pack. Okay? So that's the charging system components used in a EV conversion. It's important to have the correct components that are compatible to one another, that are compatible with the vehicle you're converting, as well as the intended use for that vehicle. And so that's where a good big picture understanding is important, so that you have the right components for the right job. And none of the components in an EV conversion are cheap, and so, or inexpensive. And so if you make a mistake, it can be quite costly. So that's why we really preach the educational aspect of all this, so that you don't make mistakes, so that you can do it right the first time and save time and money. You want to do it right the first time, and we can give you the tools for doing that. We offer our EV workshops. We also offer advice, free, email, on the phone. If you go to our website, you'll notice that you can't just go and click on, you know, I want one of these, one of these, one of these, one of those, one of those. We don't allow you to do that. If you don't understand the big picture and you only have knowledge from a YouTube video, and these are just the tip of the iceberg, whether you get it from us or somebody else, nobody's really given you that big picture understanding. And so we'll help you with that. If you're looking to buy components we can advise you, yes, that's appropriate for what you're doing or not. And then you can go buy it wherever. But you need to have that knowledge. You need to be equipped to make good decisions. So anyway, this is just another little, like I said, tip of the iceberg to give you a little bit of the big picture and a little more understanding on, in this case, the charging system. So until next time, I hope you enjoy the ride.